At just 14 years of age, Alireza Firouzja was already a dominant player, and he began to pick up some crushing victories against very strong grandmasters such as Matthias Bluebaum of Germany in this Aeroflot Open in 2017. Firouzja, playing white here, kicked off with e4, so he was almost 200 points lower rated than Bluebaum and only an international master at the time. So we had a Caro-Kann on board here, and Firouzja went for the advanced variation, and after bishop f5 we had knight to f3. e6 now from Bluebaum. We had c3 to support the pawn chain, anticipating c5. Knight to e7 now, bishop to e2, knight into g6, a very standard manoeuvre, and now we have this h4 push, trying to kick that knight if black doesn't take care of that. So that's why h5 now from Bluebaum, and now knight to g5, and this is the start of a nice knight remanoeuvre. If we just jump it back, we note that this knight isn't doing much, it's just quite a defensive piece. So that's why knight to g5, and now f6 from black, a standard break here. We have pawn recaptures, pawn takes back, you want to take with the pawn and keep control of this square. You also kick the knight out of g5 here, and we note that this knight is now remanoeuvring to f4. So Bluebaum could jump in and take this pawn, but it's just way too dangerous to do this after knight f4. You're just getting demolished on the king side. So that's why instead we see this really interesting king d7 move, a manoeuvre that Alireza Firouzja used himself in the recent European Team Championships tour. And Firouzja now follows up with knight to f4. So he's challenging this knight and also looking at this sensitive h5 pawn. Bluebaum chops off that knight, bishop recaptures, and now we have queen to e8, so defending this pawn. We have c4 now from Firouzja, a logical move, clearing the way for the knight and also looking to break down the centre where the black king is running around. And Bluebaum has a key decision to make now. He takes on c4, which does activate Firouzja's bishop, we note. Alternatively, he could have gone, say, queen to g6 immediately, but then after captures, black would take back with the e-pawn because they don't want to give up the b5 square by capturing like this. And we note that the e-file is open, and Firouzja might be able to take advantage of that first by bringing a heavy piece over. I guess Bluebaum was nervous of doing this opening of the e-file with the king in the centre. So that's why he took on c4, bishop recaptures, now queen to g6, and now a really nice counter-attacking move, queen to b3. You'll often see this from strong grandmasters. They don't just defend weakly on what their opponent's threats are, they go for the counter-attack. And Bluebaum has to respond to this threat, because if the queen takes here, then we have queen takes on b7 with check. And when the tactic's clear, black's coming out worse here, as we can see. So coming back here, that's why b5 was played here, to respond to that threat. And again, a beautiful refutation of this threat. Firouzja simply castles here. He leaves that bishop on prise because if the pawn takes, we've got the same tactic here. The king is stumbling all over the place and we're losing the rook and more material to follow. So that's why the bishop is immune, and instead Bluebaum goes rook to g8, threatening checkmate in one. Firouzja blocks with pawn to g3 here, and we have queen to g4 now, threatening to take this bishop because of the pinned pawn. And now once again, look at this beautiful move from Firouzja, rook to e1, just going for direct counterplay against the king, leaving that bishop on prise. Early signs here of a really exceptional player. And Bluebaum goes immediately wrong, so it would seem that the best move here would have been a5. You're now threatening to kick the queen with a4, then the bishop really would be on prise, plus this one would be on prise, and you alleviate some of the pressure against e6. Probably the best here for white would be taking on b5. You don't recapture as black, or there's a big attack coming against your king, but instead now after the capture here you really can take on f4 because the pressure against e6 has been alleviated for just a moment. We should also note here that if the queen takes on f4 immediately, then we have bishop takes here with check. If the bishop recaptures, we come in like this and we're picking up the rook soon. And if the king moves away directly, say to c7, well now we can take on g8, but even stronger is actually taking on f5 first, because say the queen recaptures, then we're winning the rook. And if the rook moves away, well then we move the bishop away and we just have a big material advantage. So that's why Bluebaum went bishop b4 instead, A similar idea, attacking one of the attackers of e6, and also if the queen takes that bishop immediately, now you can take on f4. And white doesn't stand worse here, but it's a different game. Instead of this, Firouzja went in for a much more direct move. Bishop takes on e6, just looking to blow the board open here. Bishop recaptures, rook takes here, so he gives up a whole exchange, getting rid of that light squared bishop. Queen recaptures, and now queen takes on b4. So he's sacked the exchange, disregarding that material, just trying to rip open lines against the king, recognising that it's in the centre and these pieces are still undeveloped here. So Bluebaum goes knight to a6 developing, the queen drops back to d2 here, eyeing the king menacingly. The other move Firouzja could have considered would have been bringing the queen to a3, but this isn't a bad move. We now had rook a to e8 coming to that open file, and knight to c3, just in time to stop the queen invading here on e2 and also e1, because now the rook has been unleashed. We had knight to c7 now from Bluebaum, very logical, looking to bring it back into the game. And here's a beautiful move from Firouzja. So you're down an exchange, you're trying to attack your opponent, how do you rip open lines here? And Firouzja has a great understanding at a young age, d5. He sees that he has to rip open lines or he'll just stand worse. So after pawn to d5, the knight recaptures, which is basically forced. Firouzja takes again, queen recaptures, and queen c2, setting up a simple threat of bringing the rook across. So he's ditched a whole pawn just to rip open lines here. So Bluebaum steps back with the king to come off that open line. We had rook to d1, and here, facing serious pressure, Bluebaum goes wrong. So he plays queen to f3, looking to attack this bishop, but he overestimates his position and misses a tactic. He should have gone, say, queen to e4, trying to trade off these queens here, or queen to c4 at worst, realising the danger of white's attack, but he doesn't realise the danger, and this sets up queen f5 check, the king moves away, and now rook d7, a beautiful invasion along this 7th rank. The king drops back, and if you want to pause the video now and look for a tactic, then I'd encourage you to do so. Firouzja comes up with the awesome shot, rook takes on a7, king recaptures, which is forced, and now bishop b8, check. King recaptures and the queen drops. So although black has 2 rooks for the queen here, this isn't a level position, because we note that this h5 pawn is now dropping as well, and that couldn't have been defended because this one was on prise too, so that's why black played rook e6 to defend. So black tries to coordinate now, he doubles the rook on the e-file, we have queen to f7, pressuring these pieces here, and also releasing the h-pawn now to move down the board. Rook 8 to e7, queen to g6 now, king to b7, trying to bring that king up the board, and now h5 from Firouzja. He doesn't hang about, he pushes that passed pawn. We had king to b6 here, so Bluebaum's trying to activate his king, but it's just so difficult for black to drum up counterplay now. g4 now from Firouzja, and he's setting up a beautiful idea here, as we'll see. So c5 now from Bluebaum, pawn to h6 from Firouzja, and now f5, a desperate attempt to try and win that white queen. But again, if you want to pause and look for the best continuation, then do so. Firouzja plays g takes on f5, leaving that queen on prise, because after black captures, which he does, pawn recaptures, rook e6 attacking the pawns, we have the beautiful winning move, pawn to g7, and it's all over. If you take here, we queen. And if you don't take there, if you check like Bluebaum did in the game, then after king f1, the game is gone. Again, if you take here, it's lost. And if you make a waiting move, we go pawn to h7. And after taking here, we queen this one. An absolute crush from the young Firouzja there. If you want to see more videos like this, then hit here to subscribe. And see more amazing Firouzja games, click here. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.